What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy View, and we are here today, Wednesday, here to discuss the weekly MVP odds update. And I'm just going to get us straight into things today, and I'm going to give it over to Paul. Paul, just show us your top 10.
We're going to start with the top 10. But I'm not going to go by the list because I don't think Ryan Tannehill deserves to be number 10. Or Joe Burrow, for that matter. We're going to go ahead and move Cooper Kupp up. Cooper Kupp's having an amazing season. We'll start it with him. I think at one point he was on pace for 2,000 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns or something. Yep. Crazy numbers. But we'll go ahead and get into the real list. Jonathan Taylor at number 9. I mean, we just talked about this in our last episode. He is absolutely killing it. In our opinion, he has taken over as probably the best running back. Obviously, Derrick Henry's out, so it makes it a little bit easier. He's not sneakily because he's doing it week in and week out, but he has dominantly thrust himself into the MVP conversation. Looking at some of his yardage right now, he has 193 carries, which is 27 less than Derrick Henry, and he has 1,122 yards, which is 200 more than Derrick Henry. He leads the league in touchdowns with 13. Then to top that off, if you look at his receiving stats as well, he adds an extra 32 catches for 322 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you're already looking at 1,500 yards out of him and 15 touchdowns, and that's through 11 games. He probably is the only one to really have a chance at trying to break the 2,000 yard rushing mark this year. I think he can do it. He's been super dominant, but I feel like that's kind of enough on him. We're going to go up to number 8, Lamar Jackson. What you got, Mason?
That's my boy coming in. He was out. He couldn't even stand up in the hotel room. He couldn't get out of the hotel room. They were just like, Lamar, you're going to sit this one out. Good old Tyler Huntley came in, barely beat the horrible Bears. It just goes to show how good. Barely beat the horrible Bears. Lamar Jackson, so valuable to that team. Had a bad week and then not playing. That's going to hurt him. But I do believe he will come back in and show out the rest of the season. Almost 2,500 passing yards already. 14 passing touchdowns, 639 rushing touchdowns. The guy is still amazing. Look for him to shoot back up in the top 5 over the next week.
I want to pause. You said 639 rushing touchdowns?
I said touchdowns?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
He's on pace for some historic touchdowns. Hey guys, I think Mason meant to say yards here. He's a little tired. He just got done with the run. It's a little late at night, so give him a little bit.
Wait, I worked 639 rushing yards.
He is correct. Lamar Jackson is a stud, but let's move on from Lamar Jackson and move on down the list with Paul.
So we're gonna move up to number 7, and that is Kyler Murray at plus 1,200 odds. There's really not much to talk about. He's missed 3 games now. Maybe he'll come back, hopefully after the bye, kind of pick back up. But I feel like where he's dropped to, it makes sense because he was number 1 and number 2 for quite a while on this list. So we're going to jump ahead of him, and we're going to go to number 6, Justin Herbert at plus 1,100 odds.
And you already know that Justin Herbert has been my guy from the start. He's got 2,900 yards, 2,927 yards for that matter, 22 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, but he also adds 39 carries, 207 yards, and 2 more touchdowns. He's been pretty up and down for the most part this year, but he's definitely shown flashes of like why he deserves to be an MVP candidate. And I think right around 5 and 6 is respectable. I'm going to get into here in a minute why he should be the number 5 over the guy who is 5 right now. But before I get into that, I want to compare him to a guy that's actually higher than him on the list. It would be Aaron Rodgers. You're going to hear Aaron Rodgers' name later on the list. He has 2,500 yards, almost 400 less, 21 touchdowns, 1 less passing touchdown, 4 less interceptions. So obviously, you know it's Aaron Rodgers. He don't throw interceptions. We know that. He has 22 carries, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. But the thing that really gets it for me is Aaron Rodgers has a catch for -4 yards this year. Do you really think you're ever going to see Justin Herbert go out there and get a catch for -4 yards? The answer is no. Justin Herbert should be higher on the MVP list than Aaron Rodgers. Come on now.
Yeah, okay.
Stop disrespecting my boy. But I do want to move straight into number 5. This is another guy that I want to talk about. It is Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes is an interesting one because he has 3,200 passing yards, which is pretty good, obviously. 25 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Obviously, those stats have gone up from what we've seen, so they have him at number 5 in the MVP odds list now. He has 44 carries, 238 yards, and an extra touchdown to slap up on top of that. But if you guys are paying attention, he has 25 touchdowns, and 10 of them came in 2 games. 2 games. If you take those 2 games, he had 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. What's that leave for the rest of the season? That leaves you 15 touchdowns and 10 picks. He has not been an MVP this year. He has not been the most valuable player for Kansas City every game this year. 2 games he has been, but the rest of these games, he has not been their most valuable player. And I just don't like him being up there. I mean, obviously the stat sheet looks great, but like at the end of the day, a stat sheet doesn't tell the whole story. And really, it's been Patrick Mahomes having 2 huge games this year that's jumped him way up into the top 5.
Big time.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and move on with the list. Tied technically for number 3 is Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford, both at plus 900. We're not really going to talk much about Rodgers because Stone just did. But we're going to go ahead and talk about Matt Stafford and throw it to an actual Rams fan. Mason, what do you got?
Yeah, guys. Matt Stafford has had some good games. He is playing well. I don't believe. Well, he's got some inflated stats, just like Patrick Mahomes. He's sitting at 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's got 3,000 passing yards. The stats look good, but that came from just a few games itself. The Rams are now 7-3. They have lost 2 games that they should not have lost. I don't think Matt Stafford, while I do think he should be a top 10 guy, I don't think he deserves to be number 3. I just think there's other guys out there playing better, doing better for their team. I am a Rams fan. I do love Matt Stafford right now. I just don't think he deserves to be number 3 on the list. That's my take.
I mean, you have someone like Jonathan Taylor. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like Jonathan Taylor deserves to be higher than someone like Matt Stafford right now because Stafford's been down for a little bit now, and I don't know. Cooper Kupp arguably could be above him as well, for that matter, because Cooper Kupp has all of Matt Stafford's stats.
Matt Stafford has looked bad in some games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he has done some, like, Patrick Mahomes type things this year. Like, just has some great games and then has some really poor games. And that, to me, it's hard to label a guy top 5 MVP that has those up and down games, but that's how it is.
That's kind of how it is with Justin Herbert, my guy, too. Like, he's just been up and down all year, so, like, that's why I respect that he's around 6, because the stats are good, and he's had those huge games to where he's led his team to wins, and he's been that most valuable player for the Chargers. But then again, Austin Eckler kind of won them that last game, too, so it's like, yeah. There's really no clear-cut MVP this year other than the guy who is number 1 that Paul's going to talk about here in a second.
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, before we hop into the top 2 guys, I just want to kind of reiterate with you guys. I mean, this is also why you don't really kind of calculate mid-season MVPs because you can have guys that are really good at the beginning of the year and they just tail off. But I think where this list is going to kind of define itself and thin itself out for the actual candidates is going to be within the next couple weeks. I mean, obviously we have 7 games left, 6 games left, depending on if you have a bye still. I mean, you're going to come into this with a lot of these players where they're going to have to play big games down the stretch. It's almost like back in college when you're going into a bowl game or the championship game where you're the last one that is like you have the ability to show out for yourself. And I feel like we're going to see Justin Herbert have those games. We're going to see Tom Brady, who I'm going to talk about here in a second. We're going to see Patrick Mahomes, Matt Stafford. I mean, it's going to thin itself out. We're not going to have all these names up here anymore. But that's also why the top 2 guys are plus 450 and plus 260 because they're favorites at the moment. We've seen them both struggle a little bit. Josh Allen more so than Tom Brady at the moment. And Josh Allen's number 2 for Buffalo.
He's another guy.
I'm not really going to talk much about him because he just hasn't looked really good lately. And his stats so far in the season dictate that, yeah, he could and should be number 2. But also at the same time, I mean, this league is built on what have you done for me lately. And so we're seeing him not play as well. And Tom Brady just came off of 2 really bad games. I don't know if he necessarily had the bad games, but 2 losses. which is something that's not common for him, especially down in Tampa Bay. But tonight, he ended up taking down
The New York Giants, baby. The super team.
2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 1 pick. Probably shouldn't have been even intercepted to begin with. It was kind of a weird little bubble screen where I think Tyler Johnson thought it was going to him, and he went to catch it, let it go for a second. Mike Evans bounced off his shoulder pads and the tip ball.
Yep.
So I mean that's also part of the game, though. That's where you're going to get some of those inflated interceptions or some of those lucky tip touchdowns. And I mean, Tom Brady, he put himself back at number 2 in the league behind Patrick Mahomes in yardage by about 30 yards. I think he's sitting at like 31-77 or something. But he's still up there with touchdowns. I think he's sitting at 29. 29 touchdowns and 8 picks. So that's still ahead of not Matt Stafford. That's still ahead of Patrick Mahomes, who Mason or Stone talked about, kind of inflating those numbers. I think this is still Tom Brady's for the moment. But like I said, there's so many of these guys that they can have that one prime game or maybe 2 games in the final stretch of the season that just kind of picks them up, puts them at the top of the list, and then they might not let it go. And we also know that it's not just individual records, because it's a lot of times if you have a poor performance for a team where they're 3-14 or 3-13, but you have a guy who has really dominant numbers, they're not going to get as much consideration for MVP as somebody who's sitting with a record of 13-3. So as much as it is an individual record, it's still a little bit of a team kind of thing. And that's what I think we're going to see. Like I said, this list is going to thin out. We're going to have guys appear that some people don't expect. But I feel like for a majority of this list, there's really only about 4 names for me that I would watch. It would be Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, and Jonathan Taylor. From Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, any of these guys, they're good. They're great players. Jonathan Taylor right now has a stranglehold on the NFL itself. We haven't seen anything as dominant as what he's doing besides Derrick Henry. And when we talk about Derrick Henry, even he missed out on an MVP season rushing for 2,000 yards last year.
Yeah.
Can
that's
I
just,
add on real fast? Can I add on real fast?
So yeah, go ahead.
Jonathan Taylor actually has 200 more rushing yards now than Derrick Henry, and he still has less carries than what Derrick Henry had before his injury. That's how dominant JT has been this year.
About 27.
Yep. That man deserves to be the MVP candidacy. And the Indianapolis Colts right now are for real. I said that a few weeks ago that Indy's going to be a team to watch out for. So they are here now. They are positive in the win record now after starting. I think it was like 1-4. They're here to play. Jonathan Taylor's the man.
Carson.
But that's all we got today. If you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment down below who your MVP is at this point of the season, and subscribe to the channel. Paul's probably going to be pointing at that subscribe button here in a second, but you don't click that one. You click the one right above the description, which is actually kind of below Paul. So, yeah, that's all we got today for you guys, and I'm going to give things over to Mason so he can get us out of here.
Fantasy view out, baby. Let's go.